Well, here we are in London to witness a magnificent procession. The Queen is on her way to St Paul's Cathedral for a Thanksgiving service to mark the golden jubilee of her reign. Processions, grand parades, pomp and pageantry. No one can do it quite like the Poms. All the Queen's horses and all the Queen's men turn out in style. Smart uniforms, shiny boots, polished brass. And all the carriages that take royalty to St Paul's Cathedral make a splendid spectacle for the onlooker. The highlight of this procession will be to see the Queen ride past in her fairy tale coach. No, it's no pumpkin and rat conversion as in Cinderella, but rather it's a gilded coach fit for a queen. Many tourists flock to Buckingham Palace. Some perhaps hope to get a view of the Queen. Others go there to see the changing of the guard, which takes place every day. But many don't know that just 100 or so metres down Buckingham Palace Road, they can spend a few hours being dazzled by all the carriages, stables, horses and uniforms, and of course the fairy tale coach, known as the Gold State Coach, all on display in the Royal Mews. So come with me, let's go to the Royal Mews and have a look at this beautiful fairy tale coach. After we've paid our money, we have to go through a strict security check. Then it's into a courtyard past all the carriages to a hall at the far end. There it is, the fairy tale coach with models of horses and their postilion riders. It's hard to believe that we're looking at the real thing. 241 years old, no warrant of fitness problems, because it's better than the day it was built. But what about its history? How did this magnificent coach come to be built? In the year 1666, the city of London was engulfed in flames, and this Great Fire of London, as it was known, destroyed about 80% of the buildings. In the years that followed, the rebuilding of the city ensured that the streets were wider and better paved. This of course meant easier travel around the capital for the nobility in their fine carriage, and then this gave rise to competition to see who owned the finest carriage. Not wishing to be outdone, the reigning King George III ordered a coach to be designed and built. No expense was to be spared, as the king had stipulated that the coach must be, and I quote, very superb. He called on Sir William Chambers, who was considered to be the finest architect of the day, to design this coach, and this was his early design. After going back to the drawing board a few times, a final design was settled upon, and the coach was built in the great Queen Street workshops of Samuel Butler, Esquire, coachmaker. He was paid the princely sum of £1,673 for his work. The coach itself measures 24 feet long, 8 foot 3 inches wide and 12 feet high. It weighs in at 4 tons and requires 8 horses to pull it. Its simple suspension means that it can only travel at walking speed. This is good for the vast crowds that flock to see it in the processions. It's not just a beautiful coach, but it's a whole work of art steeped in symbolism, as we'll find out as we look at various aspects of the coach and its construction. The framing consists of 8 palm tree-shaped braces whose branches support the roof. The 4 corner trees appear to rise out of a lion's head and are adorned with symbols of victory from the 7-Year War with France, which was just drawing to a close when the coach was built in 1762. The coach body is supported by braces or straps covered in Morocco leather and ornamented with gilt buckles. These straps are held by 4 tritons or mythical sea gods with a man's head and a dolphin's tail. The first 2 tritons over the front wheels appear to be using the straps to pull the coach and heralding the arrival of the monarch of the sea by blowing on conch shells. The tritons at the rear carry fasces, a bundle of rods in the midst of which is a trident. This is a symbol of imperial power. The roof is adorned with 3 cherubs representing the genii or the guardians of England, Scotland and Ireland. They are supporting the royal crown and carrying the sceptre, the sword of state and the ensign of knighthood. Britain's maritime tradition is also reflected in the gilded dolphins which hold in place the carved bar by which the coach is drawn, and by the driver's footboard, no longer used, in the shape of a scallop shell. The wheels, smaller in the front than the rear, conjure parallels with the ancient chariots of Rome. The whole exterior of the wooden coach is gilded in 22-carat gold, with the exception of 8 painted panels, which were painted by Giovanni Battista Cipriani, the Florentine artist and engraver who was working in London at the time. He received £315 for his work, and his paintings show allegorical scenes of England's greatness. The coach was described as a beautiful object, in spite of the £7,562, 4 shillings and 3pence that it cost to build. The largest fee of £2,500 went to Joseph Wilton for all the carving, while the gilder received £933 for his work. The coach was first used on the 25th of November 1762, when the King used it to travel to the state opening of Parliament, a duty for which it has been used many times until the 1930s. It was first used for its intended purpose, that of carrying the monarch to his coronation, when William IV was crowned in 1831, and it has been used at every coronation since then. While the coach looked beautiful, the ride it offered its royal occupant attracted much criticism. William IV likened it to a rolling ship in a rough sea. Queen Victoria refused to use it during her long reign, strongly objecting to its distressing oscillations. Over the years, many alterations have been made. George IV, known for his extravagance, spent £3,113, 17 shillings and 6pence to have the roof raised so he could sit upright while wearing his new crown, and he had the interior reupholstered as well. Edward VII had the straps adjusted to reduce the rolling effect. He also had the seats raised with deeper upholstery, and he had the hammercloth in the box removed so that he and Queen Alexandra were more visible to the crowds. Since then, all the horses have been postilion driven. After the Second World War, King George VI approved an overhaul, and one improvement agreed upon was the bonding of rubber cushioning on the iron wheels to reduce those oscillations. After tests to find suitable method, grooves were cut into the iron tyres. Spongy rubber was heat bonded into the grooves, and strips of harder wearing rubber were then fixed over the soft layer and the rims. In 1953, just before the Queen's coronation, strip lighting was added on the inside to avoid the Queen's face being in shadow, and for the first time in its history, the entire coach was re-gilded. But what about the horses? Well, until the First World War, cream Hanoverian stallions were used to pull the coach. Then, from 1918 to 1925, the horses used were black. When King George VI came to the throne, he used Windsor Greys, and they have been used to this day. They look grand in their state livery and harness. The harness shown here is the number 1 state harness, and is made of red Morocco leather, and has gilt buckles and ornamentation on it. This harness, made in 1792, was refurbished in 1834 and again in 1902, and is only used with the Gold State coach. Not only do the horses have to pull the 4 tons of the Gold State coach, but each harness that they wear weighs 50 kilograms. On special state occasions, before processions, the horses are harnessed up and then they stand in their royal stalls until they are hitched to the coach. Each horse has its own named stall. Well, there it is, the fairy tale coach in all its glory. Maybe we'll come back to the Royal Mews another day and have a look at something else.